A 160-pound Boerboel sat in a Denver shelter for 384 days. 31 people came to meet him. Every single one said the same thing: too big for an apartment, too heavy, too much dog. Then a man who lived alone on the 12th floor signed the papers anyway. And what a camera across the street caught at sunset 6 months later proved that all 31 of them were wrong about everything. Marcus Reed was 34, newly transferred to Denver, Colorado, and living alone in a 12th floor apartment off Spear Boulevard, with a view of the Rockies and a phone that only rang for work. He fixed software problems for people he never met, ate dinners standing up, and knew exactly one person in the entire city: his realtor. The shelter told him everything wrong with Otis before they told him anything right. He's 160 pounds. He sheds like a snowstorm. He was returned twice, once for being too big, once for leaning on a grandmother. He has been here 384 days, and he takes up more room than your couch. Marcus looked through the kennel bars at a fawn giant with a black mask and ears like velvet triangles, and Otis looked back. And then Otis did the thing that ended the conversation. He stood up, walked to the bars, and pressed his forehead against them, waiting. "He does that," the volunteer said quietly. "Nobody ever does it back." Marcus did it back. He signed the adoption papers that afternoon. I still see you haven't subscribed. Otis shares his sunset with strangers every single night. Share one tap back with him. Hit subscribe. The elevator ride to the 12th floor took 40 seconds. Otis spent all of them sitting upright, facing the doors like a bodyguard on his first shift. A neighbor got in on 6, looked up, looked way up, and got out on 7. The apartment surrendered within a week. Otis claimed the love seat on the balcony the way weather claims a state. The cushions aged 10 years in 7 days. He ate 12 pounds of food a week, drank like a horse, and greeted the mailman through the door with a woof so deep it moved the welcome mat. At his first checkup, the vet's scale read 162, and Otis looked personally offended. The waiting room, built for 9 patients, held Otis and one extremely patient cat. But the strangest thing Otis did, he did every single evening, and he was never late. At sunset, wherever he was, whatever he was doing, Otis stopped. He walked to the balcony door and stared at the handle until it opened. Then he climbed onto his half of the love seat, sat upright like a man watching the news, and faced west. And at the exact moment the sun touched the mountains, he let out one long, theatrical sigh and lowered his head onto Marcus's shoulder. Every evening, without fail. 8:31 in June, 8:03 in September. The sunset kept moving. Otis always knew. On cloudy evenings, he sat there anyway, sighing at the gray like a critic, because for Otis, the appointment mattered more than the show. Marcus started ending his workday around it, then his phone calls, then his life. Across the street, on a balcony 1 floor down, a 78-year-old retired librarian named Eleanor had been filming Denver sunsets for years. One evening in May, an enormous fawn head rose over the railing across from her and photobombed the entire sky. She zoomed in, a giant dog sitting like a person, sighing at the sun, resting his chin on a man's shoulder. She raised her camera and filmed it. Then she filmed it the next night, and the next. By the fall, there were 94 clips on her camera, and half of both buildings had seen them. In her group chat, Otis had a name before Marcus did: the Sunset Dog. Somebody called him the best rescue in Denver, and nobody argued. By the time the first snow came, one clip made it onto a local morning show, all 14 seconds of it. Kids on the sidewalk waved up at the balcony. And somewhere in those months, the ritual quietly grew a second half. When the light was gone and Otis finally stood up, Eleanor would flick her lamp twice. "Good night." And Otis would answer with one deep woof that rattled both sides of Spear Boulevard. Then everybody went to bed. Marcus and Eleanor had never met, not once. Some friendships are conducted entirely at 160 feet, at sunset, between a lamp and a bark. If a routine this small is already living in your chest, you are the reason stories like this get told. On a Tuesday in October 2025, the sun went down at 6:14, and the lamp never flicked. Otis stood at the railing, staring at the dark window. Otis waited. He paced the balcony, came back, stared again, then he started to bark. Not his goodnight woof, something lower, harder, aimed like a spotlight at that one window over and over for 20 minutes straight until Marcus finally stopped telling him to settle and started actually looking. The curtains were open, the kitchen light was on, the lamp chair was empty, and Eleanor, who had not missed a sunset in 6 months, was nowhere. The same dog that 31 people called too much, the same dog that was returned for leaning too hard, the same dog who sighed at the sky like a retired opera singer, Otis was throwing his voice across a 4-lane street like a rope, and he refused to stop until somebody grabbed it. Marcus called the building. The night doorman knew exactly which unit the sunset lamp belonged to. When they opened her door, Eleanor was on the kitchen floor. She had fallen almost 2 hours earlier, her phone on the counter, out of reach, her hip broken, drifting in and out. The paramedics said the word lucky more than once. A few more hours alone on that floor at her age, and this story ends very differently. In the ambulance, Eleanor squeezed the doorman's hand and asked one question: "Who heard me?" "Nobody heard you," he said. "A dog noticed you." Eleanor cried the entire ride to the hospital, and she was smiling. Eleanor came home just before Thanksgiving with a new hip and a walker she calls the Chariot. On her first evening back at 4:58, the lamp flicked twice, early, just to check. From across the street came one deep woof, and then a second one, which had never happened before, and Marcus swears Otis grinned. A week later, for the first time in almost a year of friendship, Eleanor crossed Spear Boulevard. Otis met her at the lobby doors, sat down in front of the walker, and lowered his forehead against her hands, the same move that once ended a conversation at a shelter. She held it there a long time. Then she gave him what she had been knitting in the hospital, a blanket for his half of the love seat, sunset orange. Today, the three of them run the whole block's evenings. Eleanor still films, the group chat still gets its clip, Otis turns 5 in the spring, still takes the entire love seat, still sighs at the mountains like the sun owes him money, and still will not consider the day finished until the lamp across the street flicks twice. People say Marcus lives alone with a 160-pound dog. Look at the footage. Count again. Because dogs don't just fill an apartment, they fill a street. They stand on a balcony and stitch 2 buildings together, one sunset at a time. And they keep watch over people they have never even smelled. Somebody once wrote "too much dog" on a shelter form. They were measuring the wrong thing. So if you live alone and the evenings feel long, remember there is a gentle giant in a shelter right now who has been practicing sunsets without you. The most loyal roommates are not found on apartment listings. They are sitting in kennels, holding their foreheads against the bars, waiting for a forever home. So tell me, that night on the window, was that instinct or was that friendship? Tell me in the comments.